It's kind of funny. My eyes look kind of wet, and they are. I don't have a heck of a lot of light on in here. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. Okay, this journal is called Rejecting Two-Eyed Vision, and this is the only video toy I had that seemed appropriate for that. Battle of Los Angeles, Hiroshima, or Hiroshima. Um, and the journal is from the 15th. It was the first one of that day, January 15th. And it was the start of a new Tracina. It was one storm. So sometimes I outsmart myself. Does that ever happen to you? I downloaded a new video effect for my webcam and used it, a cartoon effect. It seemed to work reasonably well until I looked at my file size, 4.33 gigabytes. Now, sure, the video was a bit long, but not that long. Oh well, breaking up and converting the pieces now. Meanwhile, I've got some strange things to share. To me, they're not strange at all, but to some they will be. Some may even be angered, and to that I'll just say that it depends on one's perspective. And there are certainly many ways to look at things. To understand best what I share here, find your way into heart, or simply into the now and here moment. Now here, nowhere. Either will work. I had heard before about the Battle of Los Angeles, but I hadn't known what it meant. This was a day early in the 1940s, back shortly after the famous events at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. I just learned that this battle lasted all of 1 hour and that no return fire was ever detected. Some battle, huh? I don't know, of course, but from the presentation I just saw, it appears it was a very nervous response to a UFO sighting. Many, many, many thousands saw it. The poor ETs. Their craft likely went down, and knowing the government, it was likely secretly recovered. I felt so bad watching the images of the warlike response to someone or something that did us no harm. It can be tempting to write us all off as a primitive, aggressive, and warlike race. Shoot first, ask questions later. I wonder how we'd handle the same situation today. The warlike ones are in charge. What about the rest of us? My heart's natural response to anything like this is to send up apologies and contrition to the ET race or races involved. What a terrible greeting for what may have been beings innocently flying through the western USA skies. We're even tempted to be ashamed of our race, and that's what brought me to the journal, to work this out. First, I remind myself that to rescue myself is and has to be my first major mission here on Earth, and all the rest must follow on that. By going off half-cocked, that is, not yet awakened, I'll do more harm than good. Witness that crazy hour on the California coast, definitely half-cocked, tremendously aggressive as well. You'd think we could have at least waited to see if it would fire on us or return fire. Anyway, not to get off track. So I turn my attention within. What's stirring there? How do I feel? Ashamed of the human race? Sure, it's easy enough to go there, but let's not. Let's remember that we are hugely manipulated into such things. In our sleeping state, we've been managed by puppet masters for all of our lives. Yes, multiple lives. We do our best to be true to the light of our divine origins, but that's been pretty tough. So I remind myself not to blame man for what the powers that were have been basically doing through us. It's time to start waking up to this and changing our picture of the lay of the land. It isn't anything like what we've been taught. Let's drop our allegiance and loyalty to what we've been programmed to believe before marching on. What we're doing here, from one perspective, can be seen to be stepping back from identifying with the physical form. No longer content with what appears, with the surface truth, we want more. We want to see what goes on behind the scenes, hidden away. I'm just not buying the rote answers we're given for what's going on with anything. Not anymore. Okay, webcam, what are you doing? I don't know. It's like it's hiccuping, isn't it? That's really bizarre. Well, folks, I'm going to ignore it and go on. Okay, not anymore. How about you? Is trust in short supply these days? I certainly hope so. So, on the one hand, I reject the knee-jerk reaction to blame mankind for all the wars and warlike responses to things. I prefer to take multiple steps back from the scene to get what a more distant perspective can provide, more of an overall view. Let us remember, no matter what we're viewing, mankind is largely managed and handled by those who control the powers that were. Not by those powers, for they're puppets also, but by their controllers, many of which are off-world. There's a lot to this awakening we're doing together these days. We have so very much to wake up to, and the bulk of it quite unpleasant, but nonetheless, as lovers of truth, we march on wherever truth can be found. Worldwide, our various societies have adopted certain conventions, certain accepted stories for the unfoldment of historical scenes. Most of this we still accept simply because it hasn't been challenged yet. So, our programming is still intact in the subconscious. We tend to believe what we are told. Well, I have a new angle I'd like you to try on about something that happened to Japan back during the war. This will be difficult to accept, perhaps only for the Americans among us, those from the US. Other countries aren't under quite the level of mass control we experience here. Most of us here in the US are not alert to the full barrage of programming we're subjected to every day. We've been far too trusting. Land of the free, home of the brave, that's what we've been programmed to believe we are. We're only beginning our awakening in most cases. Anyway, rather than pussyfooting around it, I'll just come out and say it. What is your definition of terrorism, my friends? Is it not the attacking of innocent people unprovoked? Once upon a time, there were far more ethical standards for war. Only soldier killed soldier. Civilians were left alone unless they involved themselves in some way. Certainly, women and children were completely off limits. Well, that was once upon a time. Then came Hiroshima. There is no justification of any kind that will blind me to the very clear fact that it was only civilians that were attacked this way, those who had done nothing wrong, except perhaps to be born where they were. Thus, it is with some shame that I say the United States was the first mass terrorist in the world. Now, why should it be so hard to simply say this? Doesn't it seem quite obvious? It would be, except for the programming mankind is under, especially here in the US. Around the world, we've allowed brother to be set against brother in such horrible ways. Our mere nationality has been used as an excuse for why we should hate and kill. We've all been fed some patriotic pap or other about how to do such a thing was, of course, justified. Didn't it end the war? We were so asleep still that we couldn't even see through such a weak argument that the ends ever justifies the means. Any means at all can be used to achieve such an important end. It was even calculated in the number of lives that, quote unquote, would have been lost. How many lives were saved by killing off those innocent people and defiling that ground with radiation? This is totally obscene. But can you see it as such? How programmed are you? If nothing else, let us at least wake up to the falsity of this style of argument. It's just a fancy adult way of making excuses for doing what you want to do. It's a way to put fairness and justice aside in favor of your own aims. We can take any terrible aims and dress it up in pretty phrases such as ending the war. That sounds very noble, doesn't it? How about doing so honorably? How about not losing our ethics in the process of achieving our aim? My stomach is rather sickened by this whole thing, so I'll ask you to do the thought experiment yourself. Take any terrible aim you like and find some pretty words to dress it up in. Now, let that aim, dressed up so prettily, be what you use to convince others to lay aside all that's decent and honorable, so that this lovely aim can be achieved. To do this, of course, you must first have people in fear and believing that among their brethren on the planet, some are these terrible enemies who simply don't deserve the right to live and breathe the same air as you do. Clearly, many pieces of programming, manipulation, and control must first be in place before such a coup can take place. A total rout of decency and honor in favor of achieving some tawdry aim. Imagine, if you will, the strength and power of the mind control and how intensely it must be focused on those in the military, especially those who dropped those bombs. They actually posed proudly for pictures with the aircraft who they used to do this terrible thing. Feel sorry for them before condemning them, my friends. Be completely fair and let us know this. In their places, you would likely have done the very same thing. Remember, please, we've been programmed. Let us now love and be gentle with the self, with every and all selves. The time for abuse, cruelty, and judgment is done. Let us wake up so thoroughly that such tactics can never again succeed with mankind anywhere on the globe. If we will but stay in heart, we won't find ourselves in judgment over such things. And I know it is hard. The mind, it really wants to object. Nonetheless, our decency, our humanity, and our divinity lay deeper within than the mind can reach. So stay in the heart with me on this. If you can't, then better to come back to this on some other day when you can. For my friends who can see with me that staying in mind will just bring us more of the same, we simply know that heart is the way we must go. Everyone and everything is equidistant from heart. Heart doesn't play favorites. Heart is fair. And heart knows we're all brethren. More accurately, we're all the same. This is where we can truly say with the Sufis, these eyes through which I hoped to see God are the eyes, the very same eyes through which God sees me. There is literally no difference, none at all. Are you there with me yet? And if not, have you at least got the sense of it, of what I'm saying here? I know that many do. Now, why, some might wonder, would I bring up something so horrible as the USA committing the first truly mass terroristic action? Stay in heart with me, and you'll know, or begin to, that by addressing these very feelings we all have inside over this, this is what will put an end to all war. Let us look at where war comes from, where it originates, and that would be within each one of us. It's not so much in our conscious mind, which has become fairly tame, but in the subconscious and the unconscious mind that we find the ingredients that make for war. These are the parts of the self that mankind typically does not take responsibility for. We're famous for suing other people, for going to court to prove how it just wasn't our fault, whatever it was. Even spilling hot coffee on our lap, we managed to pin blame for on someone or something else. This is totally amazing, and it won't be long now before we're sufficiently awakened to be able to see through such childish nonsense. We've been lulled into an adolescent mentality and put to sleep that way. Mankind has been terribly abused in the process of getting us here. But again, let's stay enough within heart that we won't go looking for scapegoats for that as well. In this age, we are not only waking up, we are growing up in the process. They go together. For there's such a maturity found in heart that it's truly spiritual. We'll be glad to take back ownership of our own life. We begin to see that along with being able to blame others for things, another major aspect of adolescence is that others are in control of your life. If you're not grown up enough, not mature enough to act responsibly, then someone else must be in control. And they have been, of course. We have surely shopped around much more carefully. No, we would have surely shopped around much more carefully than settling for the ones who've been in control for the last thousands of years. They have both no heart and no ethics whatsoever. I say let's fire the lot of them and take back responsibility for our own life. There. That was hard to bring up about Hiroshima. There are so many still today who justify that terrible act in so many ways. I'm fed up with hearing how it was so justified, so reasonable, so successful, and all the rest. I don't care anymore how much it hurts us to look at such things. The time is now for those of us who are ready to give the self a really good shake, if any of that still clings to you or to your thought processes. Keep stepping back from mind if this still hurts. Realize that it's only mind that has been or could be programmed. It's only mind who can hold such beliefs. You are not your mind, so don't let mind dominate or boss you around. In heart, we literally all know what's right and what's not. Such things as this heinous act are crystal clear from here. There is no maybe to it. And remember, cut yourself tremendous slack. If others were here with us, they'd know the pressure and the manipulation and control that we've been subjected to. They'd understand. As with anything, until you walk a mile in her shoes, you can't judge. More importantly, you can't know. As we stick close to heart, it will be easy to remember that we're all one. We're all brethren. And there's no reason in all of cosmos to pit us against one another. That's terribly self-destructive, both in the short run and in the long run. In the short run, the brother you hurt is yourself. In the long run, Whatever you do to another will come back to you. Harming anyone, any being at all, is a lose-lose proposition, visible from heart perspective. I meant to cover so much more ground than this. Hiroshima was going to be just my opening notes, my taking off spot. Still, it may be that it was the mind looking at things that way. Written from heart, this is how things turned out. And rather than go on for too long, I think I'll cut it off here. If heart isn't yet finished, then the only thing that will happen is that I'll be back doing another journal in fairly short order. Meanwhile, I'm still making moves to see if the journals can be made a bit shorter. If heart will let them, then they will be. I've made that request on behalf of those who like shorter fare. Nonetheless, these are not written for any sort of target audience. They aren't written for an audience at all. They are, as I have said, merely me working through or processing what I find within. Thus, my focus is quite internal, not on anyone, quote unquote, out there at all. I know this is a strange way to operate, my friends. I'm not clueless. It's easy enough to go back over my journals to see which ones produce the most interest, the most views, and maybe make more directed toward those things. This is not that. It may sound strange, but it says I have even a thought about you when I write. What's missing there is I don't have even a thought about you when I write these. In a way, I am not here myself. Entering heart, I step aside and just enable this flow. In effect, I leave during the writing and only return once the last strokes are complete. The journals are inward, not outward focused. I do my best to let source speak here, or higher self. Good day to you then.